Hello and welcome to another fun-filled edition of Adam's Music Box, where today I want to wish a very happy birthday to my favorite songwriter of all time, Jimmy Webb. Now, Jimmy Webb occupied a really unique place in musical space and time. Ooh, psychedelic man. But no, really, he occupied a place that was sort of after the golden age of the songwriter, but before, just before the golden age of the singer-songwriter. Let me explain what I mean. Since the beginning of pop music as we know it in the early 20th century, up until around the mid 60s, we were living in the golden age of the songwriter. The reason I say 20th century is because before the 20th century, there was really no pop music. There was folk music that in some places became popular, but the consumption of folk music on a commercial, national, and global basis, it was something unique to the 20th century. And it was in this format that the songwriter became king, sometimes queen, but typically king in the early 20th century. And there was a kind of pipeline that existed between the songwriter who operated in a kind of autonomous space. And on the other side of that space, there were record executives, record producers, singers, and musicians. And the songwriter really had all of those people, if he was good, right where he wanted them, because the executives were looking for songs that would generate profit. Producers were looking for good material to match with the talent they wanted to develop, usually a singer in the case of pop music, and the singers themselves or instrumentalists were always looking for the next big song to really let their talent shine, the song they could relate to and make their own. By the mid to late 60s, we see the rise and rise of the singer songwriter that cuts out this pipeline between the performer and the songwriter because they're the same person. Jimmy Webb really imagined himself at the beginning of his career as a kind of singer-songwriter, and he said so himself. He wanted to be a kind of rock star, and he did, of course, record many albums of his own music, but he's most known for the songs he wrote and gave to other musicians that happened to make them really, really big hits. Now, Jimmy wasn't just someone who could churn out hits like no one's business. He was someone who was an incredibly sophisticated writer in an age that really demanded it. Pop music was going through a transformation. It was becoming more direct. It was becoming, in many ways, more sophisticated in terms of its musical and harmonic diversity. And Jimmy Webb is a big reason for that. Harmonically so sophisticated. His melodies are glorious. The way that they're developed, the way they have a kind of inbuilt narrative, his ability to put really interesting middle eights or bridges into songs that then resolve themselves. The lyrics that he wrote, because he didn't just write the music, he wrote the lyrics that could be both direct or and subtle, and sometimes direct and subtle simultaneously. We could call it the Jimmy Webb paradox. And of course, it's impossible to pick one song. So I'm just going to talk to you about some of his best songs of the hundreds and hundreds, maybe into the thousands that he wrote. The picture here behind me is of Jimmy and Glenn Campbell. And Glenn Campbell was already quite famous by the time he met Jimmy. He had recorded albums showing off his absolute brilliant guitar virtuosity. He was an in-demand session player, but his career went stratospheric when Jimmy gave him the song Wichita Lineman that has subsequently been covered by everyone. You go into a sort of singing sort of lounge tonight in your hometown, you might well hear someone singing Wichita Lineman. And this was the beginning of a long and fruitful relationship between Campbell and Jimmy Webb, Galveston. Now, this song was originally given by Webb to the Hawaiian singer Don Ho, but it really again went stratospheric when it was in the voice of Glenn Campbell. And this again is an example of how Jimmy can be both direct and subtle. On the one hand, Galveston sounds like a very direct love song about a man missing his girl. But on closer inspection, it's an anti-war song because it's about a man who'd been shipped off to the war in Vietnam, frightened of death as the guns are blazing and thinking of the girl that he loved back at home. Another song about longing and sort of the innocence lost. Where's the playground, Susie? Glenn Campbell did such a wonderful version of it. One of the best songs, I would say one of the more underrated songs of Jimmy Webb. Then, of course, there's the psychedelic masterpiece MacArthur Park, made famous by Camelot actor Richard Harris, but everyone sung at the Four Tops did a great version of it. The Scottish prog rock band Beggar's Opera did a great version of it. So did Andy Williams. Frank Sinatra did a kind of truncated version. Justin Hayward of the Moody Blues did an absolute wonderful version. He also wrote, of course, for one of my favorite vocal groups, The Fifth Dimension, Carpet Man, wonderful Fifth Dimension song, and of course, Up, Up and Away, a song everyone loves, Sun Shower by Thelma Houston, well, by Jimmy Webb, but made famous by Thelma Houston. Very, very amazing stuff, even covered by the English sort of psychedelic, somewhat proggy band that's now quite obscure, Affinity. Which Way to Nowhere, Brooklyn Bridge, marvelous, marvelous stuff. The Vogues. He did a lot of work for, again, one of the best, I would call them psychedelic vocal groups ever, called The Vogues. I Keep It Hid. What a song that is. And again, many people have sung it. I love the Vogues version of that. Do What You Gotta Do. So many great versions of that. Roberta Flack, Nina Simone, The Four Tops. Wonderful. All I Know, probably my favorite Art Garfunkel song. Jimmy Webb wrote it. I could really go on. It's a Sin When You Love Somebody. Wonderful stuff. This Is Your Life. Billy Paul did a great version of that. Didn't We? What a song that is. Frank Sinatra did my favorite version of that. Art Farmer did a wonderful instrumental of that. The Moon's a Harsh Mistress. What a song. And so many great versions. I like Joe Cocker's the best. What a song. P.F. Sloan, the Association, did a great version of that. By the Time I Get to Phoenix, another one that, again, Glenn Campbell made famous, lots of people did. Just Another Piece of Paper, wonderful song. And so these are just some. These are just some of Jimmy Webb's great songs. And all of them have they're also different, and yet they're also moving. They're songs that you can tell someone put so much thought and effort into composing. It wasn't just a throwaway sort of three chords and the truth. This was profound stuff, but packaged in the form of pop music that was easily digestible, endlessly listenable, and it made stars out of many people, and it prolonged the careers of many people who were already stars. It's hard to say enough about just what a great songwriter Jimmy Webb is, but happy birthday to Jimmy Webb. And all of those songs I mentioned, you they're out there in YouTube land. Get on Spotify or your streaming service of choice. Go listen. You'll love it all. Like, subscribe. We'll see you next time. Take care.